Well, we're so excited to come and learn today from Bill and Alan, who are going to teach us about how to organize your neighborhood for all kinds of issues that might come up, whether it's a fire or some other type of emergency. It always helps to have something set up when big things get out of hand and emergency services can't help everyone. So, very glad you're all here. Alan Caswell has lived here in the Valley for 11 years with his wife Lois and has served on the Twist Town Council as well as other organizations. And he's the person who's sort of got the, the Schoolhouse neighborhood organization together and put it all together for their neighborhood up on May Hill. So he knows, he's going to show us how that works.
I didn't do it alone.
Yeah, and Bill Moody has lived here for a long time and has served as a Smokejumper base manager. He's a Wildland Fire Operations Specialist, and he's an expert on fire behavior, management, planning. So he's going to give us a bit of a history on some of the fires in the Methow, and as well as how to organize ourselves and living in this area. So we thank you so much for putting this on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start it out, and I guess this is the reason we're here. This is 2014, as you would recall, the Carlton Complex fire. This picture was taken right up here, right above the community center, the day that the fire blew up, and it went about 30 miles overnight, all the way down to the Columbia River. And maybe that is partially what prompted us to get organized. It took a year or two later, another big fire event, the Twist River fire, before Alan called us all together and we developed a plan. So we call this a Schoolhouse Hill Emergency Plan. And I might say, although today we're talking specifically about fire, the emergency plan could be for any kind of emergency event. It could be heavy rains, heavy snow, wind damage, any type of emergency. The whole concept would apply. But we're focusing on fire since that's probably the event that we're most common around here. But what I'd like to do is I'm going to start out just talking about the Methow's vulnerability, a little bit about the fire history, and I think this is just kind of lays a little bit of a background, and particularly if you are the one in your neighborhood that's going to try to put together a plan and get people interested in supporting this, it probably would pay to have a little bit of a background on just how vulnerable we are as a community here in the Methow Valley on the east side of the Cascades, and also just acknowledging some of the history we've had. It wasn't just 2014, 2015, and last year, but we've gone through these major fire episodes pretty much throughout the history of the Methow Valley, and I'll just identify a few of those. After this, Alan's going to be talking about the history of the plan we put together, which originally was the painted edition plan, and then as expanded, we changed the name, but he'll talk about the plan itself, and you should have a copy of the plan, and then Alan will kind of go through the parts of the plan that we put together. And I think one thing we need to maybe say right now is each community is going to have probably a different plan. This just gives you some of the concepts, some of the ideas that you may want to use if you are the one responsible for putting together a plan for your particular community. So this is just modeled for our little community right up here above on the hill above us. So when we get through, we'll review the contents, and then we'll just talk about the responsibilities of different people within that are mentioned in the plan, and then you'll have a chance for some questions and answers at the end. So just a little bit of a background, things that might be helpful is that as maybe the person putting the plan together, it's good to pretty much follow, once we get into the summer season, what's happening fire-wise. And there's a lot of places you can get information, very valuable information. Obviously, when you get into more high fire danger, extreme fire danger, you're going to have a lot more chance probably of having a fire start and then a very, very rapid fire spread. And that's when your plan comes into effect. So just kind of tracking the fire potential on a day-to-day basis once you get into the fire season, I think is very, very important. And you can pull up on your computer, pull up the National Weather Service. And each day, in fact, it changes throughout the day, it'll show the entire United States, and it's all coded, color-coded to different colors, represent different levels of fire behavior or fire potential. And so this is just one way you can kind of keep abreast of that. And it'll talk about, and you also get this on the television too, red flag warnings. You get watches, then it gets into the warnings, means you're right up against some of these very, very critical conditions that could very rapidly spread a fire. And when you get a red flag warning, that's when you really pay attention. This map on the right just kind of shows some of those areas that have been affected. This is not this year, but previous years. But the red flag usually identifies high temperatures, low relative humidity, dry lightning perhaps, high winds, and the cold front passage. Cold front just means when you get a weather shift, you get very, very rapid winds. You get probably 30, 40, maybe even 50 mile an hour winds following a major weather event going through the community. And that's what we had in 2014. We had a series of cold front passages in addition to the high temperatures, low humidity, extremely dry fuels. And as the cold fronts came through, produced 40 mile an hour winds, which channeled pretty much down the Methow and the other major drainages all the way down to the Columbia, which accelerated the winds and also resulted in the very rapid spread of the fire. So if you get the red flag warnings, and they will have this oftentimes on the Spokane television in the weather summary, they talk about red flag warnings in the area. Well, that's quite a event a term to really pay attention to. And we think of fires, I think we need to think in terms of a number of different ways fires can start. Lightning is very, very common, and particularly in the east side of the Cascades, and that's where probably numerically most of our fires come from. But it seems that a lot of the very fast-moving fires start in the low country from a number of other causes, person-caused fires. Now just going down the left, campfires, these could be along the Methow River, the Twist River, even some distance from the community here, but could start from the campfire. We've had power lines and wind, which caused the 2015 Twist River fire, was the power line. Arson, we're getting more and more arson, particularly in California. A lot of the very major fires the last few years have been arson fires. And I was looking at a day before yesterday in California, they had about 7 or 8 fires started right along the road about a half mile apart. Those were all arson fires. Vehicle brake shoes get very, very hot, and that's what caused the Rising Eagle fire in 2014 when I think they blew that tire and pulled over alongside the road near some very dry vegetation, and that the brake lining there was hot enough to ignite the vegetation and spread the fire. It's a little hard to see in the upper right, debris burning, probably one of the, numerically, probably one of the biggest causes of fires in the Methow, particularly in the spring before it greens up, would be debris burning. And oftentimes people go out early in the morning and they'll start their fire, and then you get the wind shift, or the increased wind during the day, and it'll rapidly spread. But that's a very common exhaust. That could be from power saws. It could be from vehicles, catalytic converters. When the grass gets cured out, just bringing the vehicle and stopping in the dense grass can cause a fire. Haystacks, spontaneous combustion. That's happened. Dozers, bulldozers, and just in some of their activities, chainsaws. So there are just a number of causes, and it's not just the lightning, and it's not just the careless campfire. So when you go by the ranger station and you see the very high fire danger or the extreme fire danger, that's when you really need to pay attention, and that's when you might want to review your plan. And you might even want to alert the people that are in the community that you have responsibility for. The thing to keep in mind is that we are surrounded here in the valley. Once we get into the probably into June, July, through the fall, we are surrounded by very volatile fuels. I mean, this doesn't look like there's much fuel there, but as soon as it cures out, just about everything there is vulnerable to ignition and very rapid spread. So we have a lot of fuels that can spread rapidly. This is not really a dust depiction, but for fires in our community, we have them both. We have the large fire depicted by the red there. In this case, coming down Twist River off of above the Dorn Ranch there, could come in and invade our community, as it almost did in 2015, or we may have just a careless fire or something in a community. In this case, this is the Twin Lakes development, and last year they had a fire there that went, I believe, a couple acres, and it happened to get a lot of resources on it, and pretty much saved it. But so you get you might get the major fire coming into the valley, like 2015, or Carlton Complex 2014, or just an ignition within the community for whatever reason. Then if you have the right conditions as far as the dryness of the fuels, wind event, and so on, it's going to spread very, very rapidly. Particularly if you get into situations like we had last year, from late June through the fall until we really got snow, we have, again, very vulnerable fuels, and if you get the wind event, it can spread very, very rapidly. A little bit of the fire history, again, a picture from 2014. This was the only picture I could find of the Twist Mill, but how many were living here in 1983? I know Karen was. In 1983, they were salvaging, tearing down the old Twist Wagner Mill. And in the summer, on a very hot day, very windy day, and with the welding operation, they got a fire started at the old mill, and it very rapidly grew. I was out at the Smokejumper base. In front of my office, I got a big piece of charred material dropped right there in the apron in front of the office. We had fire starts on a couple different roofs in town here. You know, Terry McCabe was the fire management officer. He went up, got a ladder, he went up and put out a couple of fires that were on people's roofs. It spread all the way across the valley to above the Dorn Ranch there, and started a 300-acre fire. At the same time, we had dry lightning. I know I dropped smoke jumpers up at Sun Mountain, and we had a fire also along the road about halfway between here and Winthrop. So, you know, we have some strange events, but Carlton Complex, again, don't have to say any more about that. That was probably one of the most devastating fires we've had in our history in terms of size. Concurrent with that, we had the Little Bridge Creek fire, and I spent quite a bit of time doing aerial coordination on that fire, just up Twist River, and it burned down just about down to, I had an opportunity to burn just about down to the Twist River Road. So that was going on at the same time. Also, we had the Rising Eagle fire again. It only went about 600 acres, but burned, I think, is either 6 to 10 different structures during that event. And just luckily, we got a lot of resources on it. I know I was flying the air attack on it initially, and we had about 10 helicopters were sitting at the Smokejumper base, so we immediately got all those in rotation. We brought down air tankers from Canada, from over in Deer Park, from Moses Lake, and it's just that we happened to have a lot of air resources, and we had good water supply with the Methow River right within a quarter mile of the fire, and we're able to stop the fire at about 10 acres. I mean, excuse me, about 600 acres. But that was a major event. And this is just the headline there that caused the improperly maintained trailer caused the fire. That's the aftermath, just taken right off the Twist Winthrop Highway. And again, the Twist River fire in 2015. I took that picture from just right up on top here of this DC-10 making a drop right down at the junction of Poor Man Creek and Twist River. And most people did not realize it, but the drops that that airplane made probably saved about a quarter of the Twist from being burned up. Those are very strategic drops. The fire is coming down and is already spotting. You can see the dark smoke on the left is already starting to spot in the bottom and up on the other side. And then it's a very, very steep ridge line. And with the wind we had, it would have come right through Bill White Ranch and right around through, right up above here. So a couple of good drops there really saved a lot of destruction. And Diamond Creek, this one started way up in the wilderness, but eventually burned down through 8 Mile, and had the potential to spread further. Then, of course, last year in 2021, we had the Cedar Creek fire, and we had the Cub 2 fire. And Abby knows about the Cub 2 fire. But you can see the one on the left, they just look like they're merging, but the Cedar Creek fire went eventually a little over 50,000 acres, the Cub 2 and over 70,000 acres. And there was certainly a lot of potential for major loss. Of course, the Cedar Creek came all the way down to down into Wolf Creek, threatened Sun Mountain Lodge, went up past very close to Pine Forest, and eventually started to slop over into Twist River. So we have the fire history. One thing I might mention, if you have the opportunity, if we have another major fire, which we will, the fire teams will have briefings for the community during probably every day or every other day through the duration of that fire. And you can get a lot of very, very good information. I'll give you some insights where that fire is going, what the potential is to stop it over a period of time. But this is the incident action plan. It's just a daily plan. Actually, we make 2 plans, one in the morning, one in the evening, with all the assignments, talk about all the fire behavior and the potential for suppressing the fire over a period of time. So those are plans, and again, they will have meetings. Some of them they've had here in the community center. Last year they had them down at the Twist Park. They had them up at the Winthrop McLeod Park, and they're very, very interesting and gives you a lot of good information. Now, with this, they'll also have maps. Those red lines represent the perimeter of the fire, and so you can kind of see where the fire perimeter is. And there's a website you can go to called InsaWeb, and it'll give you every large fire in the United States, and give you a briefing and give you maps and all the information you want to know about that particular fire. So there are a lot of resources out there, and there are many, many more. During the peak of the fire season, I'm usually looking at all of these, but you get a lot of good information about the fire and its potential. So community tragedies, we might think of, well, we're maybe within the city limits of Twist, but that doesn't reduce the potential for a major fire spread and actually wiping out the entire community. And, you know, you get direct flame, you get radiation from buildings, a fire that's close to another building, you get embers. Probably one of the major cause of spread of fire would be embers. Embers blowing down and getting in a vulnerable fuel that's adjacent to a home. And this is this article I read here 2 weeks ago, that wildfire burning embers transported downwind are what cause most structures to burn. So that's why if you get into the firewise, which is an excellent program, it'll talk about clearing a lot of the vegetation, the needle beds, and a number of other potential sources of fire from around your home to reduce that potential. The thing we emphasize in the fire plan would be the evacuation levels, to know what those levels are, 1, 2, and 3. Byron was talking about wanting to know, he was concerned as the smoke got close that he was prepared and ready to leave. Well, if you're following the evacuation levels, and there's some of the written material that we pass out to people in our plan that identifies what you should be doing at each level. Gives you more specifics about getting yourself ready, and many things you can do to be prepared. I would really recommend, as we're doing the plan, the Okanogan County Emergency Alert. Get on their system, and you'll automatically get an alert on your computer or on your iPhone. It'll give you an alert to a new fire. It'll also identify what evacuation level, if there is one already, and potential spread of the fire. So that's that resource, or that number is given in the plan. But that's very, very good to have. This is not in your plan, but I just made this one up for myself. So if you I have this posted in a couple different places in my home. So this is in case of a fire in the area, I get the alert. These are just things that I'm going to do. I built a sprinkler system in the back where I have a lot of vegetation right up to my property line. I installed that, so I get that going. But just a number of things that you can do for your specific situation in the event of fire. So this was down in Oregon last year. There were several different communities that were completely destroyed by fire. It was a very, very extremely dry situation in Oregon last year, particularly in the Medford area and on down through the Rogue River area. But even with the retardant drops there, that didn't seem to really do that much good, but they usually do. But you can just see the destruction. And of course, a couple in 2018, the Paradise community, where there were 85 fatalities, I think, in that particular fire, and completely destroyed the almost 90% of the town. So, Schoolhouse Hill emergency plan. That's what Alan's going to cover right now. Give us some of the history and go through the plan.
Thank you, Bill. Great job. All right, so how many of us were here during the fires of 2014 and 15? All right, the majority. So you know what the purpose of this plan was. And so I'm sure you all have good memories of that fire. And I have two to share. First being in awe of watching the DC-10s drop this red retardant on surrounding hillsides to save homes, obviously, but to save our town too. And the second memory I have is at the start of the Carlton Complex fire, working with the mayor and council member Hans Smith, who were immediate neighbors. Hans and I went door to door in our Painter's Addition neighborhood, making people aware that we were at level 1 with the emergency levels. And no sooner did we get back home that the mayor advised that it had been raised to level 2. And so Hans and I run around again. I think there was 39 homes in our neighborhood at that time, and I think we reached every one of them. And by the time I got back the second time, I was out of gas. And realized we needed to do something different. The police were busy elsewhere, and so were the fire officials, so they couldn't, be responsible for the whole town. So that's where this plan was born. And I think at the time, Methow was offering the emergency preparedness classes, and I think I sat in on 3 of those trying to get a game plan for our neighborhood. And so we had a meeting finally in 2016 to start implementing this plan. And with the help of a lot of good neighbors, it came to fruition. But the overall purpose or theme of the plan is neighbors helping one another during community and schoolhouse emergency disaster situations. And again, I mentioned that rather than going door to door, we decided to separate our neighborhood into quadrants or pods. And at the same time, our local irrigation district was putting new irrigation lines through our neighborhood, and I spied this map that they provided, and that helped us decide how to divide up our neighborhood, and which, so Bill Moody is in charge of, where are we here? Bill Moody's way down here at the bottom, and so he's the neighborhood coordinator or pod leader for this section of homes. So every pod leader has about 6 or 8 homes in which to notify the neighbors in case of emergency, and just be aware of which neighbors might need more help than another neighbor, and to have a list of the resources that each neighbor may have, such as a generator, a propane tank in case of electricity going out, things like that. So this map was very helpful for our neighborhood to get started. And that's one thing that Methow was stressing at the time, was to map your neighborhood, get to know your neighbors, get to know the houses that might not be accessible. Anyway, so that's what we attempted to do, and it took a year to get everything organized, and so we always had a central meeting place in which to have our meetings and get oriented, basically. So again, Methow, I don't know how many of you have taken their preparedness classes. They've been canceled the last couple of years, and maybe they've had them online, I'm not sure, but they present somewhere I have a packet. They present these packets that are loaded with all kinds of emergency preparedness information, and we've handed these out, I think, to every neighbor up there, and still continue to do so as our neighborhood has grown from 33 homes to 48 or 49 now, and with more to come in the near future here. So, but this little disaster and emergency handbook is, I think, the gist of the whole program. So if you can acquire this and read through it and distribute it to your neighbors.
And where do you get that?
I can get them to whoever wants them. I have access to them.
And you are,
Abby Ludeman,
Methow.
with Methow at Home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or through Methow. Jen Schumacher at Methow is the preparedness leader, and she'll provide these resources upon request too. So, but part of our plan was, again, I stated, to learn resource inventory, what the neighbors have, what services they have, what skills they have to help one another in an emergency situation. And as Bill said, not just fire, but could be power outages, could be snowstorm, mudslide, whatever. And Bill mentioned property owner responsibilities. That's listed in our preparedness plan. Our neighborhood up there is surrounded by a lot, come July and August, a lot of dry vegetation. So people are advised to keep, obviously not burn. For those who aren't aware, the burn ban starts today, so through, I believe through October 15th, so no more burning yard vegetation. And, but just be a responsible homeowner. Keep your property firewise and safe. We have a lot of recommendations that are listed under neighborhood preparedness and responsibilities. Then we have a contact list in which I stated we have one person in charge of all the phone numbers and addresses up there for the pod list. And let me find my pod list. I'm not seeing it at the moment, but it's here somewhere. Anyway, so each don't know where it has to be here. As I stated, each pod is divided up into, I'll just tear one of these out.
How many phones?
This one is, this is Bill Moody's pod. So you can see 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 people in Bill's neighborhood, of which he's up here at the top designating him as a pod leader. But, so we have the addresses, we have a contact, phone numbers, emails. If there's any children or pets on the premises, we have them listed. And then people list their special needs, what help they might need or what services they might need, whether you have a generator, propane tank, or wood source for wood heat are all listed on this page. So in the event of emergency, Bill just has to make sure that these 8 people are notified and see who might need help or who can contribute to helping. And so I think we're up to 6 neighborhoods, 6 pods now in our neighborhood, with more to come.
Well, Alan, that kind of sounds like a lot of work in the beginning to organize, right? I mean, it's just you have to be prepared and put the work in to come up with what you have there.
It didn't happen overnight. I attended the Arrow Methow's classes 3 times to make sure I had my ducks in a row. And it took a lot of good input from neighbors like Bill Moody, Hans Smith, our mayor, a lot of good neighbors up there who all chipped in and helped me put this together. So yeah, it does take a lot of work and a lot of resources at the beginning. And then if you can designate one person to maintain it all, which Bill is now that person in our neighborhood, but he has a lot of resources to reach out to for help, for suggestions or improvements to our plan. The last 2 years in a row, Bill has updated our preparedness plan to suit the times and the needs. So it needs upgrading. It keeps just like running a business.
Then, how did you approach the neighbors for the first time? Do you want to be put on this list?
Went door to door.
And you just asked them?
Yeah, barbecue. Yeah, we had a neighborhood party, and again got suggestions from the neighbors, and had a sign-up sheet and had them write down all the contact information they wanted to provide or felt comfortable providing. And then for those who didn't attend the dinner, we went door to door, and not everybody wants to participate, but eventually everybody came around. And some people don't. They might provide a phone number, but not everyone wants their email or shared or things like that. So you just have to work with them. But,
So have you visited other areas that do this? Or see where I live, there's a lot of apartments, and I can see that some people are not running out to hear about that information.
have we visited?
Other
No,
areas?
we just focused on our hillside up here.
I mean, you haven't gone to other towns to see how.
No, Methow does that. So,
Okay.
and we learn from them.
Okay.
Yeah. And other neighborhoods have come up to our hillside to learn what we have done. And I know Cindy Button of Methow has her neighborhood preparedness plan in place out of Elbow Canyon Road. And I'm told Edelweiss has a preparedness plan. I'm sure there's others in the valley. I'm just
Pine Forest
Pine
definitely
Forest.
has one. Scared.
and so I'm sure every plan has been adjusted to suit their particular needs. A lot of them discuss egress in times of emergency, which is a huge issue everywhere in the valley, not just our neighborhood or Pine Forest or Cub Creek. Just getting out of this valley is not easy, and getting out of certain neighborhoods is even harder. Yeah, so in a nutshell, again, the gist of the program is just neighbors helping neighbors in time of emergency. So, anything else to add to it?
Add a couple things. We just, Alan doesn't like the name activist, but he was our activist. And I think that's really important that you have somebody there in that geographic area that recognizes the need, and that may be you, and that you then can somehow generate some support of your neighbors. And as we did, we had a barbecue and chatted about it a little bit more and how we might do this, but generating that support, and then once you have that support, you need to identify realistically how big of a geographic area, how many residents can you manage with your organization. Of course, you can always expand the organization, but there's some point in there where it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain it. And then recruit a basic organization. We had just a kind of leader president, and I think Al and I kind of joined had that role between us. Secretary is very important to maintain the roster of everybody in the geographic area, and then pod leaders are very important because those are the ones that you might say on a day-to-day basis have a responsibility. In the event you have emergency event, to notify everybody, to put markers on the doors, and that's covered in your information there, to put a blue tape marker that you have contacted that resident, and so as far as which evacuation level. So you just need the pod leaders are important. They also keep, as you get new people into the community or into their pod, they notify the secretary so they can get the inventory information for contact, and then some kind of a plan.
Yeah. So when as Bill mentioned, the pod leader responsibilities is to get a packet of this information to the newcomers and get to know their new neighbors, and certainly get the address and phone numbers on the contact list. So, and we've had, surprisingly, we've had a fair number of people come and go up there, and so it takes a skilled person such as we have Virginia Board, who we get the information to her, and she keys it in and provides that to the different pod leaders. So the pod leaders have a, responsibility to.
And I have a question about, as far as if you were to scale this down, you have quite a large neighborhood where some people may have some smaller group. Could they just do only one pod and try to just kind of, maybe start smaller and just have one person who's kind of juggling these various tasks?
Yeah, certainly just if one person wants to take it on. Say down on Bridge Street where Jane lives, I don't know if one person would be very efficient down there.
I would think two
Two.
each end of the,
Hit the both ends of the
yeah.
north and south of Fifth Street, yeah. So I don't know what the total number of homes you have down there, Jane.
I don't know at the other end either, but the south end, but I could count.
And yeah, so Jane's neighbors are in closer proximity than our neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So it might not take as many people. But yeah, that would be up to the neighborhoods to.
Yeah, and Karen brought up apartments. You brought up apartments.
Yeah.
We've got three apartments and two fourplexes and this amount of people.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if each apartment would be better served having their own.
Well, especially the senior apartments,
Yeah.
because they all have, some of them would definitely have special needs, lead.
So do you have a phone tree or anything such as that to reach out to your neighbors?
No, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
But it's a need because we're in a dead-end street,
Mhm.
so,
Yeah.
which most of our streets, even ours.
Let's see, we had Jen Schumacher had a presentation just a couple weeks ago, and one thing I hadn't thought about that she mentioned was not only a contact list for our immediate neighbors, but a phone tree to reach out to your relatives and families who don't live in the area so they know where you are and what you're doing at the same time. And Jen also mentioned the reflective blue address signs being very helpful to the emergency officials in the event they need to get to a specific address in a hurry. She mentioned our neighborhood not seeing the addresses easily from the streets as the emergency vehicles go by. So letting people know where you are and letting the emergency officials know where you are too would be very helpful. Yes.
So is there anyone that has reported the neighborhoods that have this plan? As we think about our neighborhood, I wondered geographically if there are other neighborhoods near us that have organized so that if we have a first get-together, who should be included in that?
Possibly Arrow Methow would have a.
But you don't know if you file your plan with Arrow Methow, so that they would know.
Where are you?
Carlton.
Hopefully, yeah, whoever put these programs together, I'm sure has attended Jen's classes and she would be aware of.
Yeah.
Maybe an answer to Abby's comment a few minutes ago that start small, but I think I think that's going to depend on how much interest you have, how many people, and I think if you have start small with one or two pods and it's effective, I think the word's going to get around, and I think it will expand. You can't force it, but people are going to have to recognize the value of it.
Yeah. And really, it's a, I don't want to say it. Anyway, in a year in which we've not had a fire, it seems like the interest falls off, but another disaster seems to, no pun intended, to spark the interest again. So people who may not want to participate after at first, a disaster may help them make up their minds. Yes?
I think that under uses inventory, your number 6, discussion guide, map your neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the website that I stumbled across, and it had a playbook, like line by line, of what you do to organize your community. And it had one column, and then on the other side, it had tips for the organizer. Like, have water in your house for refreshments when you have it. And I'll see if that is indeed the website that I stumbled across.
Uh-huh.
It was a really good playbook for how you do this.
Yeah.
And I'll communicate with that if it is or if it isn't, but it was outstanding.
It's in this packet somewhere too. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the program that Jen was following,
Yeah.
around the neighborhood. So it was great. That's great.
Yes, Marie.
When I lived in the river, there was in this packet, I think, a sheet of paper that once you leave your house and something happens, you have to have that sheet that says you're okay, and in the back you put where you are and if you should be contacted. So that somebody
Yeah.
who comes to your house and says, "Hey, it's time to evacuate and you're already gone," they know what's going on.
Yeah. A sign such as
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Or this.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
that.
again,
Yes, yes.
does that work?
And that's to be taped in your window?
Yeah, your entrance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your entry door or a window near your door. And Bill mentioned the blue tape too.
So after you've called?
Yeah,
After you've reached out to.
you've got, put some of this regular blue tape, and you can tape that on the entrance door one, and that you've made a contact, one stripe, and then if you've made contact, people are aware, then you just exit, and just make it on the other side. But all this information, I would suggest, we're going through this rather quickly, but read through the entire plan. A lot of this is in the Pod Advisor paper, talks about what they would do in terms of the alerts.
And Bill, this is Bill's personal evacuation notice record for his immediate neighbors, so it helps him remember who he's reached out to. And he can make notes of what he's done and who he's contacted. I don't think any of the other pods, I know ours hasn't done this yet.
It's good to have a couple of people in each pod with that responsibility, because you're not going to be home 24/7, and you hopefully that one of your other neighbors can pick up, and will then perform the pod advisor responsibilities.
So Abby, do you have these packets?
I don't have them with me today, but for anyone who would like more information, we can send it out through Methow at Home to your email. And if we don't have it, go ahead and give it to us if you're not a Methow at Home member. Otherwise, we'll send it out, and you can be expecting more information and follow up.
So-
We did send out our own packets for all the home members 2 summers ago, so.
Yeah.
But of course, those are like, oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Are there any other questions?
You mentioned a meeting spot. Do we actually have a meeting spot?
In our neighborhood?
Yeah.
In our pod? Not yet, but Art Tasker is our pod leader, so we'll have to work something out with him. Hopefully a house with a generator, so that we can have internet and things like that in case of emergency.
We did, but they moved, and we haven't identified a replacement yet.
Yeah.
That's if you can stay. If you have to evacuate, you're out of it.
Yeah, that's true.
So, again, I don't know when Methow is going to offer the in-person classes, but when they do, I really urge you to participate in one or more of those classes, and they'll help you lay the groundwork for whatever you want to propose for your neighborhood or for your area.
I think I'll just finish up here just with the, recognizing the need, so that's the important part. And we have certainly a lot of need, we've got a lot of communities and that could be potential for the plan. And again, hopefully we have somebody who's interested in that geographic area of town or elsewhere in the Methow Valley to then initiate interest and get your neighbors together and formulate a plan. But there are a lot of little communities. This kind of shows our Schoolhouse Hill community and geographically what's included. In the bottom right there, those are houses that have been built or are in the process of construction right now since they took this aerial photo a few years ago. So it's really, not that big of an area in terms of numbers of homes, but it covers quite a geographic area with really a lot of potential. You can see a lot of the area there that's either has timber or it has a lot of sagebrush, bitterbrush, cheatgrass, and so on. So it is very, very vulnerable to fire, and that's again one of the reasons why we put this together.
And as you can see, there's only one way out. So.
Which is a major, major concern. And so that's something we are discussing, and a major concern to our little community up there is, and that's just coming back down Main Street, down to 2nd Street by the fire department. And if you recall, 2015, that fire is coming down Twist River and really put you in jeopardy as far as making a safe escape from the neighborhood. The communities at risk, there's just a lot of them. Pine Forest, they're addressing this situation, but they've been really had major fire activity there in 2015 and again last year. Twist River Development, go further up Twist River, just about wherever you have structures and people living, you automatically increase that potential from the number of different fires starts that I covered at the beginning of the presentation. Lost River, another one. Just looking at how heavily timbered that is, it's very susceptible to some very, very strong high winds coming down the valley. Edelweiss, and Edelweiss I think has really taken on the challenge. I know last year they had a simulated major fire event, and I think Kat Heim and Nancy Farr put together, and it was quite successful, I think, in terms of communications and coordination, and I think that they really saw the potential for a major fire event sweeping through that community, and I think they've done a pretty good job of addressing it, although the evacuation routes are still one of the major issues. Winthrop, just another community like us. Twin Lakes, last year they had an event in Twin Lakes that had the potential to spread through the whole community there, and they just got a lot of resources on it in a hurry and knocked the fire down and came out okay. And Twist, of course, we talked about that before. Want to really emphasize Firewise, very, very good program. They're there to help. You can contact probably Kat Heim and others there that can get you tuned into the Firewise program, but it's one of the best programs around. And also another document that we pass out is a Prepare Your Home, which a lot of it's related to Firewise, but a lot of very, very good suggestions as far as preparing your home and your property to prevent fire spread. So with that, we'll open it up again for any more questions you might have.
Well, I've got a comment. This is really, I really appreciate, thank you so much for doing this because, see, my mother-in-law is living next door to us and she's on oxygen. And so, like, I got my hands full if the power goes out because I got to get her on oxygen bottles from the electric compressor that she's using, right? And so, as well as the water, you know, and all the other infrastructure when power goes out. And so it's given me an impetus to reach out to a couple neighbors just as to start, you know, like, what have you got? Here's what I got, and you know, it challenges and things to offer, and start a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really, in interviewing Kat Hine and Nancy Farr, who created the fire in Methow Valley, that was their number one thing. Like, the number one piece of being fire adapted is actually starting to work with your neighborhood. And like you say, to identify your resources that you have and the vulnerabilities. So that you can, yeah, help take care of each other. Thanks for, you know, it's like you have these thoughts to do these things, but to actually pull it all off at the level that you guys have done is really something. So thank you so much for inspiring us.
Again, it didn't happen overnight. It took,
So a lot of work.
yeah.
Well, here's the deal. You live in Carlton. I'm kind of by Carlton. Why don't we like hook up?
How many miles in between?
There's 4 between our house and your house. 4 miles.
Also, just in case people don't realize that How at Home does have a YouTube channel, and we've been doing a lot of different programs on Zoom, and we record them. And Brian Murati, who was the property manager up at Liberty Woodlands during the Cedar fire, and we've been involved in trying to get that whole community firewise. He gave a great presentation and slideshow on, and that's just on how to, you know, really prep your home, your property for the Amber, to try to make sure that you are more defensible. Because that's a huge thing too, right?
Right.
Basically, when the fire emergency, when the folks come in, the firefighters are going to say, this place looks defensible, this no, you know, and so.
Triage.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can get your trees limbed up, if you can get that 5 foot, you know, just start at your house and get 5 feet around your structure that's free of combustibles. That's huge. And if you're a Methow Home member, you know, put in a service request and let us help you find some help. Or if you want help in organizing your space, your neighborhood, yeah, come to us and we'll look for resources and support for you.
Any other questions? Appreciate your following along here, and hopefully you gained some information here that's going to help you organize your neighborhood.
Thank you. Thank you so much.